Hello and welcome to Some of My Friends Read Comics. We've got Chris.
AOL keyword X-Force.
Great. We've got Vince.
Darling, you're a cheap bottle of tequila, and I am the worm.
And I'm Kia. Hello, welcome to the show. We're reading some X-Force today. We've never read any X-Force. That'll be exciting. Most recently, some of the members of X-Force appeared in Deadpool 2. Not very many of the ones that we're going to talk about, but it gave us a good reason to kind of talk about them. Plus, we've been on a bit of a teen kick. We had some Prez stuff that we were reading last time, and I'm sure there are other teens. Yeah,
and Mark Morales, the inker of Prez 2015, was the inker of this book.
There we go. Nice
connective
time.
Tissue, yeah.
You always pay attention to those inkers for us when nobody else does, Vince. Thank you.
I am the Vince. I speak for the inkers.
So we're reading a bunch of X-Force comics from the mid-90s. What year was it? It was like 1997, 98, something like that, right?
97, yeah. Right around Heroes Reborn era.
Right, kind of the end of that when a lot of the main heroes like Fantastic Four and the Avengers were kind of out of the picture for a little while, about to come back. And these were written by John Francis Moore, who I don't think I've really read much of anything by. Have we read anything of his on the show before?
I don't think so. I keep getting him confused with John Francis Leone, or John Paul Leone.
Okay, I know John Paul Leone, yes.
So every time I was looking up more information about the writer, John Francis Moore, I was looking up John Paul Leone, and I'm like, wait a second, his bibliography doesn't even mention X-Force.
He's one of those writers who I'm pretty sure I've read stuff of, but I really couldn't tell you. Also art by Adam Polina, which was really nice. Had that nice kind of 90s style to it. I'm sure we'll talk more about it as it goes. Anything else that he's drawn that we've talked about? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Wow, a lot of first-timers on the show tonight.
Did we review
listeners, I'm sure.
Did we review the video game NBA Street Volume 2? I don't remember.
No. Did he do the art for that?
What? Yes.
No way. The art style is really good in that one. I like the art style of NBA Street Volume 2. It's much better.
I don't think I've ever played an NBA Street game.
Oh, so V2, Volume 2 is where it's at. V3 and Home Court, they get a little too realistic, but V2, Volume 2, that's the sweet spot.
Very nice. Also,
Adam Polina.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Adam Polina, he left comics in 2000 or so, and basically just got into graphics design and was like, "Why make comics anymore? This is silly." And good for him, I say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good for him. I'm looking at his bibliography real quick. I'm sure there's more to it because online all I'm seeing is some scattering of X-Force issues and some Apocalypse stuff. And I'm sure he's done more work. Well, I hope your video games are treating you well, Mr. Polina. So before we get too far into X-Force stuff, make sure to join us after the show where we're going to keep on talking about Crisis on Infinite Earths. We're on issue number 6 now of our continuing series. Halfway, yeah, we're hitting the halfway point tonight. It's going to be great. Let's get right into X-Force here. If you've never read any X-Force or aren't really sure what they're all about, I just kind of had this impression of them as being the muscly, gun-toting idiots that Cable would lead around, and they would shoot everything, and Rob Liefeld would draw them terribly. And that's not an accurate representation, I think, of what this X-Force is. Chris, you're the one who recommended these issues. You want to talk about it a little bit?
Sure. I mean, so way back in the 80s, Chris Claremont created the New Mutants. They were kind of... Marvel said, hey, remember the X-Men were about teenagers? And no one on the team except Kitty Pryde is a teenager anymore, and she's everyone's favorite one, so why don't you make more of them? And originally, they were just going to give them to another creative team, but Chris Claremont was like, no, I make all the mutant teams. This one's mine, too. And so he created this group of kids, and for about 100 issues, the New Mutants were around. And then they became X-Force, which was like this paramilitary strike team or whatever, which was not very good comics for the most part.
Okay, good. I'm glad I wasn't too far off.
But pretty quickly, Fabian Nicieza, or however you say that guy's name.
I've always said Nicieza, but I feel like that's also wrong.
I've also go for a Nicieza.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
However you say that guy's name, he took over the writing, and he's very. I mean, he's not the greatest writer, but he's very good at writing X-Men comics, which is that he seeds mysteries, and then you're like, ooh, who's that guy in the shadows? And then there's like 10 different guys in shadows. And so that became kind of a feature of X-Force pretty quickly. You found out Cannonball was an immortal, as basically a Highlander. There was this whole secret race of externals that a guy with a ponytail was part of. This whole complicated continuity. Sunfire turned out to have an evil version of himself.
Yeah, lots of evil versions of people popping up around this time.
Yeah, Cable has an evil version of himself in this book, right?
Yeah, it's like not even important. Like they mention it as a throwaway line later, and I'm like, oh, okay, so that guy, all right, cool. But yeah, so this did feel more like New Mutants territory to me than like the X-Force that I had felt. Like it did have, I don't know what it is about all these 90s X-Men comics, but this felt so perfectly in line with all the rest of them, and that it was just like, it felt kind of like Generation X and New Mutants and all that sort of just a team of kids going off and doing their own thing, which I really enjoyed.
So this actually felt a lot like my only other time reading X-Force, which is the X-Statix run of Peter Milligan and Mike Allred, which is the first issue of X-Force is a team that I don't know, and then that team is kind of blown up, and then it's another team for the rest of the run.
Yeah,
so it's very similar. I was like, okay, this is what X-Force does. Okay, cool, got it.
Yeah. We'll talk about that. We talk about X-Statix a lot on this show. I think we're all big fans of it. So I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later, because that ends up happening after all this stuff.
Yeah, but I think I might have said in the past, but I didn't like X-Statix right when it came out because they called it X-Force and they canceled the X-Force I was reading, which was about these guys, and so I was like, what the hell are you doing?
So
it's totally understandable. Yeah.
So everybody that dies at the beginning of the X-Statix run that I know is these characters?
Nope. Actually, no. Everyone who dies at the beginning of the X-Statix run is a totally different set of characters that is calling themselves X-Force. We're just going to confuse the listener if we talk about that. We'll get to that at the end. All right. So let's get into the ones that we were reading, X-Force 70 to 75. We really could have started with 71 probably, because 70 is a bit of a cleanup issue. Like a lot of dangling threads. Half the team has been kidnapped by some evil organization that's trying.
Operation Zero Tolerance, Ruh-roh.
Yeah, that's right. That's what they're called.
Topical.
Great name for operation, right?
Yeah, it's never Zero Tolerance. Always about kidnapping people that are different for no good reason. Very topical.
We've got some mutants.
It always.
Go ahead.
It always reminds me of the King of the Hill line from the principal of Tom Landry Middle School. If I showed even a little tolerance, I couldn't call it zero tolerance.
Oh, man. We've also got some mutants working for the Mutant Liberation Front, MILF, as I like to call them. I kept seeing that, like, what? What? All right. We've got Domino, who has recently also been captured, and they like shaved her head, and not the Domino we're used to seeing.
Domino. I saw her in a movie just now.
She was in a movie now. Yeah, she's famous.
She was very cool.
She was. Cable's there with his metal arm. Boy, speaking about Deadpool the movie, I'm so glad they simplified Cable's story. Like, you know what? He's going back to kill the guy who killed his family, and that's it. And that's pretty simple. Instead of this, I just get confused about him in the comics. So
I like the alternate future child of Scott Summers and Jean Grey. I'm okay with that.
I am as well, but there's so much other stuff that I just don't want to think about.
Once he joined that like warrior order of the Ascani, that's too much.
Yeah. Vince, I know you're not a fan of apostrophes and names as well, and I think that's got Cable written all over it. Even though, Cable doesn't have an apostrophe in his name, but his middle name is Dayspring. Is that it?
Yes.
I'm not that middle name. So if any of you name any potential offspring Dayspring, it just sounds stupid. All right, I'm off it. So the team is like all back together after all these adventures, and Cable's like, okay, world's a dangerous place out there for us mutants. Let's all take on fake identities so that we'll be safe. and the team is not having it, and they say, all right, Cable, I think we're going to have to say no. So Cable says, fuck all y'all, I'm out of here. And that's kind of the ending of that whole thing. Oh, Domino also was like, I need to figure myself out after they experimented on me. Sorry, Cable, our relationship is over, because I guess they had a relationship. And I'm also out of here. So all the sort of mainstays of X-Force, which really were Cable and Domino, and I guess maybe even Deadpool for a little while, I don't know, they're pretty much nowhere to be found.
I mean, I wouldn't call Deadpool a mainstay of X-Force.
Okay, you're right. Probably not.
He's a recurring antagonist, and he's in 2 of these issues anyway.
He does show up, yeah. But it is weird because the beginning, like the cover for this issue is like, hey, road trip, X-Force gonna hit the road, and that's just sort of like the resolution at the end of this issue, like, all right, I guess we're gonna hit the road, which seems like a weird thing to put on your cover when it's the ending. I don't know. So
a weird cover though.
It is a nice cover. I think it should have been the cover to the next issue, but that's okay. So I feel like the next issue, let's just jump right into it. The 71 is where the story really gets going because let's talk about our main cast. We've got 5 main mutants who are going with us. We've got Siren, a.k.a. Teresa Rourke. She is Banshee's daughter. She's got pretty much the same powers as Banshee, right? Not screaming, like the strong vocal cords, and she can fly. Mm-hmm. She's kind of the leader of the group. We've also got Warpath, a.k.a. James Proudstar. And they've got a little bit of a thing going on between the two of them. James Proudstar is the last survivor of his Apache tribe, and he is trying to find out the truth behind the massacre. Okay, all right.
Was he in Brubaker's run by chance, Chris? Do you remember?
Yes.
Okay, that was him. Okay.
Yeah. We've got Sunspot, a.k.a. Roberto da Costa. He's got like sun-absorbing powers, and sometimes when he's like powered on, he's very dark-skinned, like almost I don't know what the deal is, almost like negative. Yeah. Sometimes he looks like Nightcrawler. Sometimes he looks like pure black. Sometimes I don't know. It's hard to tell, and I don't know how he controls it.
He's also a trust fund kid, right?
He's a trust fund kid, and we find out that his trust fund's got some legal issues going on with it, so they've been cut off, which is like a sore issue for the team because they don't got no money.
And he's Brazilian, so he has the power to choke at the World Cup.
Soccer. I watched it all. I know what you're talking about.
You watched it all. All of it.
Yeah, it's. I'm excited for the finals. Is it over?
Yeah.
Yes, it's already happened.
Thank God. I'm so tired of people talking about it. We've got Meltdown, a.k.a. Tabitha Smith. I feel like they never used... I wrote this note down, Meltdown, and they never use her name in the comic. They all just call her Tab or Tabitha.
They called her Meltdown in issue 70 a few times.
Did they? Okay.
Is she Boom Boom from Next Wave?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Makes more sense. She's got kind of like generic energy blasting powers. Little bit of an adventurous free spirit type. And then lastly, we have Danny Moonstar, who doesn't have a code name because she's not technically on the team. She was the one working for MILF.
Yep, quite the MILF.
And she joined up with them. She's also a Native American, which made me really happy that there are like 2 Native American characters on the team with totally different backgrounds, totally different stories. She is... I don't think I wrote it down. Was she Cherokee, did they say?
I think Cheyenne.
Cheyenne. Okay, great. Totally different tribe from James Proudstar, going through her own stuff. She's got psionic abilities. Really kind of reminded me of Psylocke a lot. Where like Psylocke would kind of create those knives. She's making arrows. Yeah. And so these are our 5. They're out on the road, and this first issue very much like taking it easy. Like we're just kind of out here doing our thing. Don't really know what we're doing. Like you've got this loose kind of goal of finding out who massacred your tribe, but it's not like a giant priority. And there was something very relaxing about this issue that I enjoyed. their car breaks down, and so they are in this small town making friends with whoever they can.
They got picked up by the mystery gang.
They did. They got picked up by the mystery gang.
Velma was definitely there.
Yeah. Although there was like Velma, it definitely reminded me of Velma and Shaggy, right? And they just kept calling them creeps and weirdos, but I feel like hippies play a big role in this book. They show up again at the very end.
John Francis go to Burning Man?
Yeah, they go to Burning. No, they didn't call it Burning Man. They called it something else. But yeah, they go to Burning Man, and they make reference multiple times to like, hey, we fit right in with all these hippies and freaks, and nobody cares, which is great. I approve of that.
The other thing I noticed is that right at the very beginning of the issue, they say, well, Operation Zero Tolerance is over. That got resolved, I guess, in another X book. Because the thing that they told Cable's like, you guys need secret identities. And I'm like, no, we don't. We're fine. That whole reason why they needed secret identities is essentially gone by this point. It's gone like 2 pages into this.
Yeah. And they also, like, oh no, our car's broken down. We should use our powers to, like, fly or run to the next town. They're like, no, but we're trying to keep a low profile. It's like, oh, geez, maybe we should have just stuck with Cable.
By becoming mobsters? This plan falls apart really quickly.
Now listen. Now they didn't know they were becoming mobsters. All right. So the end of this issue, they're like in this motel, and they overhear some random guy getting like, he's being shook down by some mobsters, and the mutants save him, and he's like, "Whoa, that was great! Thank you guys so much. I'm gonna make you an offer. You guys like be my bodyguards." And they're like, "All right. Well, we do need some money. All right, let's do it." And so I guess we can just jump to the next issue. I'm sure there's some stuff we missed. We can get back to it. But in the next issue, they kind of split up. Siren and Warpath go off to investigate this massacre, while the other three go along with this Richie fellow to protect him from the mob. And they find out that he's kind of in the wrong here. Like, the mob lent him money and he didn't pay it back, and so they're just like, fuck you, we're out of here. Oh, wait, you're trying to make a movie? Okay, we're back in with you. It's like real back and forth with this guy. And then it just kind of goes nowhere, and they're like, all right, now we're just hanging out and going to bars together and getting lunch. That's kind of what it is for a few issues with them. Really, I think Siren and Warpath are the main story in these middle 4 issues, right?
Right.
And anything we really desperately need to talk about with them. The country bar that your opening quote, Vince. That was a nice lyric about tequila there. Just good times hanging out at a bar. Again, a very laid back, easy, chilling, relaxing kind of book, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, structurally, this book it's like 4 different plots going on. They don't really like collapse upon each other very well.
No, but I think it very clearly is just like, yeah, these other plots are way less important than the main plot. Like, we kind of see a little bit of Domino and what she's up to, which isn't particularly important. Like, she stops a bank robbery randomly, and then some agents somewhere are like, I want to find who that is. And that's it. We never really touch on that again. Maybe we do later. I don't know. We've got... what is the other story? Oh, yeah, Deadpool shows up in one of the issues to do what? He just, like, breaks into the mansion to, like, check on X-Force, and they're not there, right?
Yeah, to set up a crossover with an issue of Deadpool that we didn't read.
Okay. No, okay, so maybe that's what I was thinking of, because I think I have read those issues of Deadpool, and it was a little familiar to me, and I was like, hey, wait, have I read this?
Yeah, I think that issue of Deadpool is why they're separated at the beginning, is because in that issue of Deadpool, they're the two that go with him to go have that adventure, and then at the end they're like, oh yeah, that was some fun times we had with Deadpool.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense, because they didn't really explain why exactly they were all split up. Yeah, so I guess for the rest of this, at least for now, let's focus on Siren and Warpath for a little while. Although, again, they also barely call him Warpath in this. It's always James or Jim Proudstar. They are following up on a lead of one other member of the tribe that happened to survive. What's this guy's name? Michael something Water, was it? Anyways, they follow up on this. He's like a drunk in like some random broken down building, and he's telling them all about what happened, and just before he can tell them who did it, his freaking head explodes. And I'm like, all right, this book has got me back in. Not that I was really out of it, but a head exploding. Like, that's pretty classic. Can't tell you because my head just exploded. There was, all my talking about, like, oh, it's nice that there's 2 Native American characters. There is a moment where he kind of calls himself, like, he's real down on himself, and he calls himself a drunk Indian. And I'm like, would he say that about himself? Like, that seems strange that the Native American character would call himself a drunk Indian. I don't know. But he's also not in the best headspace. So afterwards, they keep on doing some digging, and this guy named Martinek catches Siren and Warpath. He's like a were-dog kind of thing. He's like he transforms into a big, creature-y, dog-like monster, and he tells them that Smythe did it. I don't know who Smythe is. Chris, fill us in.
Smythe?
Oh, wait, did I write it? Strife. I wrote it wrong. Strife.
Not Alistair Smythe.
I was thinking Spider Slayers.
I was thinking Smythe, and yeah, sorry, Strife. They're all bad guys. If your name ends with Ife, you're a bad guy, right?
Yes. Strife is a clone of Cable. He created the Legacy virus. He was the X-Force's main baddie during the Rob Liefeld and then Greg Capullo years. But then he died in issue 25 or so of X-Force, so he had been dead for a while at this point.
Okay.
And so then there had been in I think it was 96 or 97, Marvel had a just cheap tie-in event where every comic they did a -1 issue. And,
I remember that. Yeah.
And it was like an excuse to be like, hey, if you guys want to add some new continuity that can then be resolved in your main books, this would be a good time. So there's 3 or 4 different things where it's like, oh yeah, the reservation was exposed to radiation by this evil guy, which is all from that issue. So it was not the continuity prior to 6 months before this comic.
Anytime I'm going back and reading old runs, I always have a hard time with those -1 issues because there's not an easy way to know when to read them. Unless you're picking them up and it's in a trade somewhere. It's oh, okay, there's a whole bunch of issues here. Where does -1 fit in? Always been a little weird. But
yeah, it's only helpful in a book like this that keeps referencing. You're like, oh, I got to read this X-Force -1. They keep telling me it's important.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of books will do stuff like that where it's just oh, it's a regular issue and we're just going to have a flashback moment. Great. But yeah, making everyone do -1s, I can see how that's a good marketing thing. Ooh, X-Force number -1? What does that mean? I gotta pick this up. Mm-hmm. This Martinek were-dog thing, does he have a hero, a villain name? I don't think he did. But he catches them and they manage to escape, blah, 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 big fight, and the were-dog kills Warpath. Oh no! He stabs him with a virus, and that's it. That's what it is. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Makes his heart run oh no! And James Proudstar, you are dead, and Siren is heartbroken. Oh no, boy, tough times. But it's okay. They told us on the cover that he was going to die, so it's always nice for them to follow through.
They should have done that thing where they say one of the characters on this cover will die.
They always include some random ass nobody in there. Oh, it's always
great. Who's it gonna be? Spider-Man or D-Man?
So most of X-Force number 74. We're already on 74. Yeah, all right. We're just kind of going through this. Most of it takes place in Hell. They don't actually specifically call it Hell, right? But it is basically Hell. And Proudstar is fighting Strife. And Strife says, all right, I'm going to trade my soul for yours so that I can go back to Earth. I can go back to life. It's going to be great. Meanwhile, you've got Sunspot, Meltdown, and Moonstar. They're all in this country bar in some other state. When they get a visit from a Valkyrie out of freaking nowhere, I was very surprised to see this from all right, what's this all about? Moonstar, who used to be in MILF, also used to be in the Valkyries. All right, cool. She used to do a lot of stuff.
This book actually does a really good job of telling you its bonkers back history that I don't know. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, cool.
It instantly tells you just enough, and it gets past it. And I'm like, all right, great, yeah.
I'm a mutant. Strife is a clone of Cable. Okay, I don't know why. I don't need to know more. He did the Camp Verde thing. Fine, cool. This girl, she's some type of mutant. Didn't seem like she had much to do. Mutant liberation for whatever. She's also a Valkyrie, so she knows Thor, I guess. That's cool. And they're like, your friend's down in hell. You gotta go deal with that.
And then, that's such a great little way to just bring the team back together and be like, all right, so this other storyline wasn't going anywhere. We're just gonna get them out of here and get them back into the main story.
Yep.
They all fight while Siren is in the real world, kind of trying to resuscitate Proudstar. And of course they succeed. Proudstar gets brought back to life. My favorite moment, I think, of all this issue, or maybe of the whole this whole arc that we read, is there's a devil character. I forget what his name is, but he might as well be that's right, Blackheart. He's
Son of Mephisto.
Great. He's the one. He rules that little section of hell, and he is the one who is going to do this whole soul trait thing and be like, okay, I'm going to take Proudstar and Strife, you can go back to Earth. But he's like, no, look, I never cared about that guy. I was just dangling this possibility in front of you because you're in freaking hell, man. And now that you know there is no hope, this torture is going to be even better. And I really appreciated that moment. I think that was great.
Yep.
So poor Strife, stuck in hell. Aw, so sad. Getting more and more tortured, and everybody is alive, and everybody. Oh yeah, they found a bunch of files about everyone who was involved with the massacre, and they give them to Emma Frost, I guess, who says, "All right, I'll take care of everything, and everyone's gonna be in trouble, and everything's okay. The day is saved." Pretty nice, huh? We could have just stopped there, but no, we read X-Force number 75.
we gotta go to Burning Man.
Yeah, gotta go to Burning Man. It's like after that big adventure, we gotta cool down a little bit, go back to relaxing. So they go. What did they actually call this thing? Like a colossal. It had a weird name. There's like a colossal man made out of metal that they're gonna explode. Everyone's hanging out. Karma is there. She's a mutant I don't think I've seen before. But they're all talking about her new look. She shaved her head and has pink hair, like pink buzz cut.
Yeah, she was one of the original New Mutants, but she did not last on that team very long. She got corrupted by the Shadow King and disappeared for a long time. But, they thought she was a villain, but then I guess she got really gross and fat because of the Shadow King, and then is normal again.
Okay.
Yep, that's part of the story.
Wow. All right.
That definitely was not kept in this version because everybody is aggressively in the 90s.
Yeah, everybody is very, very sexy in this book and attracted to each other too. All that kind of comes to play here.
Yeah, Deadpool is way too swole.
Yeah. Oh, I think it makes. I still have Adam Polina's little Wikipedia page open here. It says that at one point he wrote for a parody of Star Trek called Sex Trek. Oh no, he drew for it, featuring characters named Jism T. Cock and Jean-Luc Picard. So yeah, I can see that guy drawing this stuff also. Everybody is, very aggressively attracted to each other. A few connections are made here at Burning Man. Really just one. I thought another one was going to be made, but you've got Tabitha. What's her superhero name?
Meltdown or
Instant,
Boom Boom.
Meltdown. Meltdown and Sunspot, who have been having some adventures together. They're having a good time. Thing is, we haven't really talked about Meltdown is dating Cannonball, Sam Guthrie, who used to be the leader of the team, I guess, or at least a prominent member. I know I've read some stuff with him throughout the years. He's been kind of a mainstay of X-Men for a while. I think at this point he'd moved up to the main ranks, and so wasn't really hanging out with them. So they're talking about is this long distance thing going to work? But Meltdown and Sunspot have a little moment, and they're both like, ooh, geez, what are we going to do about this? And then all of a sudden, Cannonball's there at Burning Man also to surprise them. And first off, just like everybody showing up at Burning Man, what's going on here? But I did think that was a nicely revealed moment. I was genuinely like into it, like, oh shit, what are they gonna do? It was pretty nice.
I also love how Cannonball just kind of like rolls into town and he's like, guys, so Cyclops and Jean Grey have like moved, and I don't even want to tell you what happened to Maggot because it's fucking crazy. And I'm thinking like he's kind of like giving hints at like what happened in the other book, but like if I was in one of those books and I met characters from another book, I would be a gossipy bitch. I'd be like, oh my god, can you believe that like the X-Men from the 60s are back in the present day now, and Bobby is weird, and he's gay, and I don't know what's going on, and it's really messing up Old Iceman. And I, like that's how I would be. Like, I would just be telling everybody's plots, like, as the gossipiest bitch. I would love it. It'd be great.
That's fair.
This felt the realist moment to me, that, like, Cannonball's just like, guys, this is crazy. I loved it.
Remind me, Cannonball's got a sister, right? Is that Husk, or am I thinking of something? Okay, cool.
That's
just make sure I've got
Generation X and X-Men.
There it is. Yeah, she doesn't factor into the story at all. I just wanted to clarify what I'm thinking about. All right, cool. So everybody's hanging out, and then there's also some supervillains there hanging out. Like I said, everybody is at Burning Man. You've got a couple people who are really there to kind of introduce a few future plot threads, like somebody is watching Sunspot. Like, don't worry, we're gonna get him. We're gonna ruin his life. We forgot to mention somebody else had been following the team around. That guy they were protecting from the mob, the filmmaker. After they left him, he went like for that guy, and so like that's another threat that's gonna be coming up. But the one supervillain that does make a difference here in this issue is Selene. Mm-hmm. I don't think I know her at all, but Moonstar knows of her. I guess mainly like a Moonstar villain.
Yeah, she was an X-Men and New Mutants villain, mostly from the 80s.
Okay, all right. She's got like some magic-y kind of stuff that she's doing, and shows up and says, all right, I'm going to get you. And then Moonstar says no, and they fight, and Warpath is there. She was doing some cool mind stuff with Warpath to like help him get past all this the massacre of his family, and he's, they were kind of having a little moment there. I kind of thought maybe they were going to connect as well, based on how they were drawn, but maybe that's just, that's just some old sex trek art creeping in there.
I thought that was, I mean, we'll talk about it, I guess, at the end, but I thought that was really cool, that you can have more than one friend and not be dating them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It just, the way it was drawn looked like they were getting very close to each other, and I was like, oh, is that what they're trying to do here? Especially because they were already doing it with the other two, I just wasn't quite sure where it was going. But you're right, it is nice that I think these relationships are really very well drawn. I think we haven't really mentioned that the female characters are all like very strong. There's a lot of creeps throughout this book of like people hitting on them, and they're just like, no thanks, I'm good, like get out of my way, and kind of leaving it at that.
And I like that, and it's not in the arc we're covering or anything, but you can kind of tell even from this issue, Sunspot and Meltdown getting together is stupid because they're both idiots who are basically the same.
They are. I was thinking, like, which one is the hothead on this team? And they are very much like similar. Yeah, they are a little redundant as far as characters go. You're right.
Right. But I think it's good because it's like, well, they made a mutually stupid decision, and they're both dummies. So I was like, that it's not like they're going to be married. They're not going to be like the one couple for each other forever. It's just like, this is a way that it's going to break up, Meltdown and Cannonball, because that's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And now they can all move on.
Yeah, after that moment of them, like, they have the little kiss, and then Cannonball shows up, and they're just both just like, what the fuck did we do? Holy shit, how do we go on with it? Like, I appreciated seeing that internal monologue of theirs throughout the rest of the issue. So the Selene attacks, there's some magic stuff that happens. The giant colossal man comes to life. It's a great little action sequence. Karma, who's there, with the pink hair, she has what I like to call psycho pirate powers, where she can control people's emotions, right? She like placates the entire audience and gets them to not have to, just like file out orderly. And the day is saved and everything's okay. Good work, X-Force. Very proud of you.
Yeah, Tabitha makes her biggest little boom ball thingy ever and blows up the exploding man, and everyone's like, wow, what a great Burning Man this was.
Right, everyone's loving it. A lot of drug references throughout the whole thing. Good stuff. A lot of fun. There wasn't a whole lot to talk about, even though I didn't think the pacing in this book was like slow or anything. There was just lots of like fun, relationshipy, charactery little details that were nice. That we can't like. They don't always relate back to the whole plot, so it's tough to mention all of them. But it's just such a nice, like again, a laid back book where I really just enjoyed reading it, even though not every page was incredibly important. Yeah, I had a good time with this. What about you guys?
I mean, it's not my cup of tea. It's 90s X-Men, which is, like getting into the deep end of the pool pretty quickly. So it like just the stories it was telling, the characters, it didn't really like grab me. There were moments that really grabbed me. I think the whole issue in Hell was really, really good. But I felt like there were a lot of moments with Proudstar, like talking about like the Camp Verde thing. I'm like, I get it. We don't need to talk about this anymore.
Yeah.
And there were like 3 or 4 pages of it, like every issue leading up to that. I'm like, I don't care. We're good.
Vince, you generally don't like team books as well.
I don't.
And I think I can tell you really like the Hell issue because it's A, focused on a single character, B, has a very clear mission. It's like, okay, we got to get this guy out of Hell.
Well, yeah, and the way it collapsed all of its stories on top of itself, like with the Valkyrie stuff. But to this book's credit, like 90s X-Men is a fucking spider web of continuity and characters that I don't know anything about. And there's a line in issue 75 that I think that I'm gonna say I understood every single word of this. It was if Danny's Valkyrie sister hadn't brought the rest of X-Force to the infernal dimension where Strife was holding me captive. I knew every single word of that. I got all of that. Like,
Great.
In 6 issues, I understood everything that was said. And those words are nonsense. But I got it all. So like it's a very much a credit to John Francis. I can't remember Moore. John Francis Moore. They're like, I understood every single one of these characters by the end of this, and I also really appreciate that the front of every issue, like these are all our characters and their background. I really
that's what Marvel was doing in 97, 98. They had that whole thing that every single one of their books had, which was, I think, great. That's about when I really got into Marvel at the time as well, and I think those were a big help.
Yeah, it's like trading card paragraphs is great. Perfect.
Yeah. Chris, I mean, you recommended these, of course, but you want to talk a little bit more about them?
Sure. I recommended this because I liked X-Force as an edgy teen of the 90s. I would skateboard my way down to the 7-Eleven and buy these comics from a shelf that had comic books because it was the 90s and that existed.
No way. They didn't used to put comics on a shelf, man. You're so old.
Yep.
Go buy your comics at Walmart.
I think, did we talk about my comics at Drug Emporium last time? Did I mention those?
I think we did.
I feel like, all right. We shouldn't plug Drug Emporium 2 times in a row. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Keep going.
But anyway, so I read these books when I was much like Vince, not an expert on X-Men continuity. I had watched the cartoon. And I knew who the action figure X-Men were. I knew who Cyclops and Wolverine and all those guys were. And I even knew who Nightcrawler, because he was in the video game, and characters like that. But I did not know X-Force really when I started reading this book, just off the rack. And I loved it because it's the same way they say that you should always write character. Harry Potter should always be 3 or 4 years older than his target demographic. Because you kind of project yourself oh, that's going to be like my older brother. That's going to be me in a few years. And so reading this as this, a 12-year-old, I was like, oh, this is awesome. I'm going to go on road trips with my friends and solve mysteries. And so it's just a lot of fun. All the characters are very well drawn, I think. I mean, I don't know that there's any that are reinventing the wheel, really. I mean, you can tell where they started with sort of basic comic book types, But I think there's interesting stuff going on, especially like, I know Vince was saying he wasn't a fan of the Camp Verde stuff, but I liked that this is Warpath for a long time was just like, Cable would be like, we need you to punch a hole in this wall. And he would just be like, okay. He was just like the guy, and he was super strong and super fast. So it's just like, okay, so he's good. Like that's literally why his brother was killed, is that there's nothing interesting about a character who's just good and kind of a jerk.
Makes sense.
And so him having kind of this imposter syndrome and like being like, well, who am I really? Like, what do I do? I've kind of defined myself by being mad about my brother being dead. I mean, that's literally why he has that name, is to get revenge on the X-Men for his brother's death.
Oh, because his brother was the one from Giant Size X-Men, right? Mm-hmm. Who died instantly after joining the team. Yeah.
Who died in their second appearance.
Poor guy. So that makes sense. Warpath. I think when they have that little spirit journey and he talks to his mom, he's like, Warpath, what kind of a name is that? I know you're a sweet boy. So I appreciated that moment.
Yeah, so I liked that. And then even, what was his name? Thunderbird or whatever, being like, yeah, don't be an asshole like I was.
Yeah, I think I was an asshole. It's all right.
So I appreciated all that. I thought Siren was super hot. So, as a teenager, I was like, okay, she's great. She's like the serious one. So as a book smart kid, I'm like, well, she's the best for me.
You have to pick the best for you. Yeah, that makes sense. I think I did the same thing anytime I'd read a teen book as a child. Yep. It's like that's the one I'm gonna marry. Great.
Yeah, I am more of a Raven than a Starfire.
Yeah. All right. Yep. So I think we're getting weird. We better keep moving on.
But anyway, to wrap up, rereading it, I really do appreciate. There's a lot of. I mean, I liked it as a first-time reader because it's just fun. It moves well. You get to know the characters, and you're just like, this is fun. But on a reread, it's just like, this is really clever the way they seed it gradually. That at the end, they're like, hey, we're the New Mutants, aren't we? Like the. Karma and Cannonball, and they didn't have like Doug Ramsey's ghost show up or anything because he's dead.
I don't even know who that is.
He was on the New Mutants. He became Doug Locke when he got stuck. He got stuck in that robot warlock.
Oh yeah. Okay, I do. Okay, yeah.
So anyway, that guy's dead, but the rest of them all meet up, and it's just like, hey, we've kind of grown up. We figured everything out. And then the book ends with Cable. You find out he's been following them. He's one of the guys in the shadows.
Cable's at Burning Man too. Everyone's at Burning Man.
And he's basically like, well, you kids don't need me, and just kind of wanders off. And I was like, that's actually pretty cool. That's literally the payoff is just that he's like, well, I don't need to meet them. Like I've accomplished all I need to.
So now I understand a lot more of the hate behind Ecstatics, which we talked about a little bit at the beginning of the show, because if this X-Force continues for about 40 more issues until 115, and with issue number 116, they completely changed the entire book. And to be quite honest, they really should have just started with a fresh number 1 here, but they don't. And it's like a whole new team of people.
And they kill Cannonball and like half the old X-Force team. Of course, most of them came back, but they kill them on the last page of X-Force and are like, next issue, new team.
So they kill. Wait, okay. So they kill the X-Force team at the end of 115. Mm-hmm. At the beginning of 116, a brand new team shows up. That team completely dies in 116. And a new team in 117 shows up, and they're like the ones that we're going to follow, who becomes Ecstatics.
But to be fair, even in 117, like they have a massive turnover. Every 3 issues, half the team is dead.
Well, also, at some point, I know that the original X-Force shows up to claim their name back from this X-Force, which was kind of a fun joke, but I love Ecstatics, and I always didn't understand, like, what's the big hate? They just canceled X-Force, and that comic sucked anyways, but I get it now. These were, like, better than what I expected them to be, and that sometimes people like other comics, and so, yeah, it makes sense that people would be upset that they just, like, canceled their comic without telling anybody. They did the same thing with Thunderbolts. Did you guys read that, like, Thunderbolts 76, somewhere around there, where it just, like, becomes another comic about boxers?
Yeah, like, I hated that so much. I was so mad at Marvel around that time.
And so, like, no matter how good that story would have gotten, I feel the same way, where it's like, what did you do? That was, like, the dumbest thing. Make this its own thing. Because, So I get it now. And eventually at this, we'll talk about Ecstatics on the show. We probably don't need to. We've talked about them so much that you could clip all of our references to Ecstatics together to make a full episode, I think. But speaking of clipping things together to make a full episode, I think it's time we talk about Crisis. Yeah, let's get to number 6. You guys ready for this? Wait, anything else to say about X-Force? X-Force, great. So
the Vanisher was also there for like 2 seconds from Cable and Deadpool.
Was he really? Oh, like
yeah, he was in 70.
Oh, he was in issue. Oh, like one of the people that they saved at the beginning, or
Well, no, he Warpath saved him to get information on Camp Verde in issue 70. He was in Deadpool 2, where he is electrocuted.
We won't spoil it. That was a great moment. All right, so Crisis 6. We have a new Monitor who is here. I barely understand who the original Monitor is, and now we have a new evil version of the Monitor who has showed up after the first Monitor died.
More evil clones.
Yeah. He boosts the Psycho Pirate's powers and says, you're going to take control of one of these worlds while these other dumbass heroes are trying to save it. And so the bunch of the heroes that the Monitor has picked out are going to this world. Is it Earth X, I think they go to try and save it? And the Psycho Pirate has control over these heroes, and he's having them fight back against the good guys. And at this point, I think I realized what my biggest issue with Crisis is so far, is that the threat is so big that it has become, like, too big. It's just too big to comprehend. Like, okay, the world is ending. And the stakes are so incredibly large, but so non-specific at the same time. Like, okay, the world is ending. How? It just is. Okay, well, how are we going to save it? Well, the heroes are going to fight, and they're gonna fight until they save it. Okay, and that's a lot of what this issue is. It's just like heroes fighting, and I don't know why, and I don't know what they're trying to accomplish. But
yeah, that's totally right, because like last issue was the first time they were like, I put up these totem monument tower things to help like stave off the thing, and I'm like, oh, okay, now we have MacGuffins that at least makes sense a little, and then it's immediately backpedaled from that.
Yeah, but so the biggest sort of go ahead.
No, I mean that's the deal, like. You know, like I feel like last issue gave us the most information about the stakes, like made the villain or, you know, the issue make sense in a way at least, and that the characters had like some type of understanding. Whereas this continues this trend of shit's just happening, but there's no like character moments. There's no like time to reflect on like what it means to people, or like having people have any resolve or failure of resolve. There's no rising action. It's just like, well, this is falling apart, and then this is falling apart, but we're not really explaining why. And there's this Monitor guy, and Lex Luthor is turned from a baby into, or Alexander Luthor was a baby, now he's not a baby. Okay, but like I don't understand how he's contributing here.
Yeah.
There's like a team. Lila's lost her powers now, and
well, this is important because Lila, who was Harbinger, also used the quote power that she got from Monitor when Monitor died, and she harnesses that quote power to save 3 more random worlds, like Earth X and a couple other ones, and I don't know how.
This sounds like me playing with my goddamn action figures. Like,
right.
Axe Cop shit.
Yeah.
None of this makes sense. Well, then she got the powers from when she killed the guy, and then she's going to use the powers to do this, and the Psycho Pirate was given, like, you have all the powers. And I thought last issue there were only 2 Earths left. And now there's 5 more Earths?
And now there's 5 Earths left, right, because she saved 3 more, I guess. And then Alexander Luthor says, you've used all your power. Harbinger is no more. You're just Lila now. I'm like, what? How did you even know? Okay.
Who's Lila?
Yeah. And then the cliffhanger page was so weird because I guess there's a character named Wildcat who has he come up at all in this series before? I don't know. But the original Wildcat is just lying in bed, and this new Wildcat shows up and says, well, sorry, you broke your leg or something, and there's got to be a new Wildcat, and it's gonna be me. And not only is that so weird for the last page of this issue, but also the panel layout is strange because Harbinger and or no, I'm sorry, not Harbinger. Harbinger's gone. Just Lila now. Lila and Alexander are in the top right corner of this page, whereas everything else is reading down. Boy, I have some like problems with that page right there. It's just set up very strange. I didn't know what to read first. And I was very mad, but the end, like the little teaser for the next issue, had me a little more excited. It said that the next issue was Origins of the Monitor, of Pariah, and of Harbinger. And I'm like, okay, maybe that's going to shed some light on everything, because right now, I kind of need to know who these people are and why they're important.
7.
I know.
I don't have much confidence in this book, because, like...
I'm going to be honest, I've lost a lot of confidence as well.
Because I'm looking at the cover for issue 7, and it's Superman holding the dead Supergirl, which is like the iconic like cover image of Crisis.
Right. And it's like a big deal.
And like I've been assuming, okay, well we've set the table, and then like there's going to be like 3 or 4 issues where we like know the characters that we actually do know, and we see how this affects them. But I don't know how, because Superman's been fucking nothing in this book, and Supergirl's really, I mean, she's been like physically there. But, like, I don't know what her deal is. I don't know what she cares about, other than she's just a body that's just being thrown at things and says, like, get to the thing lines.
She fought Captain Marvel for, like, 2 pages in this issue.
Yeah. I don't even remember that. Honestly, everyone was fighting everyone, and none of it felt important.
I'm kind of disappointed by the art. I think there's just too many panels on the page. Like, that it's hard to follow. Like,
the Aquaman stuff was like all over the place. I completely lost.
I mean, there's just too many characters, honestly. Like with the fucking freedom fighters. Sorry for cursing halfway through this show. I don't think
that's all right. The freedom fighters were my favorite part, with Uncle Sam punching everyone in the face.
The freedom fighters show up, and I'm like, I recognize 2 of these guys. You gonna tell me who the rest of these are? It's like I know who Uncle Sam and Phantom Lady are, and it's like, and these other 3 people.
Well, the other thing that I appreciate, I think in one of the earlier issues I brought up, like, how weird is it that these, like, different versions of characters are meeting and haven't made a weird thing of it? And, Chris, you mentioned that, okay, all these characters have met on multiple occasions. Like, okay, that's cool. This book just gives you no context for any of that, and just, like, doesn't set up the baseline for where we are, and, like, really keeping things... Yeah, it really should have kept it a lot more simple, but it tries to be too grand, and as a result... accomplishes nothing. Oh, no.
Yeah, and it's like, it's not even, I've been reading JLA books from the 70s, and some of them are pretty bad, but like, it's fun, like superhero comics. So it'll be like Green Lantern will do something incredible at like 30 seconds after he's punched out by yellow seaweed. But
oh, Yellow, my arch nemesis.
But it does a good job in those books of like having superhero moments where it's just like, oh, like Superman just does something cool. I feel like, there's like fighting in these books, but there's very little of like and I'm not a DC fan, but if I was a bigger DC fan, like growing up, if I had lived through DC in like the 70s and 80s, it's like that kind of sense of fun is just not here. Like it's already embraced the like 80s kind of aesthetic where it's all just like, oh, it's so dystopian, this future.
Very grimdark.
Well, and I think to your point though, Chris, getting back to also my point, just like there's too much panels on these pages. I think it's hard to show anybody doing anything cool when there's 20 panels on the page and every panel is like super small. Like it's really, it's visually hard to like, and I'm not saying like you go like, to like the 2000s, 2010s of like splash page. But this is too small. It's too small. Mm-hmm. Even in my oversized hardcover.
I was thinking about this as we were reading it. and how much I didn't like it, unfortunately. But I had been wanting to read Crisis for a while. And I also know we had one of our fans kind of was like, hey, when are you guys going to do Crisis? And I don't know if that guy expected us to be this harsh on it, and I feel a little bad. I feel bad. So, my dude, I'm so sorry if you were hoping that we would love it. But hey, there's always 6 more issues. Maybe things will turn around. Yeah. We got to hold out hope. Things are going to turn around. There's a reason it's a classic, right? I don't know.
He says like unsure.
I'm really so unsure.
There's a reason it's a classic,
all right, we got to
right?
end this issue. Oh, we got to talk about next time. Next time on the show, we are going to read. Oh gosh, so Steve Ditko recently passed away. Gosh, so sad. I know we talked about it a little bit. I think with when Spider-Man: Homecoming came out, and maybe not. I don't know. Steve Ditko holds a place in my heart. I think you guys as well. We've talked about him before on the show.
Got the most efficient writing I've ever seen in Amazing Fantasy 15.
I
know he did the image work, but he really did. He did most of that Spider-Man stuff.
So much of the he is so instrumental in all that Spider-Man. Stan Lee wrote the words, but the pacing and everything that you love about it was Ditko. And so we definitely have to read some Ditko next time. We've read a ton of his Marvel stuff already, and so we figured we'd kind of do something a little bit different. Plus, hey, this issue of Crisis had Question and Blue Beetle in it for a little while, so we figured we would do some of that. We're going to read some old Charlton comics. This is our first time reading some old Charlton comics. These are from 1967. Blue Beetle 1 through 5. Written and drawn by Steve Ditko, although it's not credited as being written by him. It's written by DC Glanzman, whoever that is. It's Steve Ditko. But this is before DC owned the rights to any of these characters, just some little startup comic book company doing their own thing. And so I'm excited. I've never read anything from Charlton. And I think a good chance to talk about Steve Ditko as well. So I'm very excited for that. So join us for that next time. Vince, Chris, anything from y'all? Oh, Your Stupid Minds. You guys just did Gotti. Is that the name of that movie? Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That episode was real good. Real good.
Thank you.
I don't y'all did a really good job. Nick did a really good job. Not to say that Chris didn't, but Nick was on fire. He's doing some real good voices that whole episode. And Chris, I thought you brought some really good analysis, especially around Goodfellas and how it compares to Gotti. I'm probably going to let Kimberly listen to that again. I'm probably going to listen to the episode again just so Kimberly can listen to it because it was really good.
We keep trying to do recurring segments on this show as well, which I keep forgetting to do because I'm a terrible host. Hey, what are some recurring segments that we did that I should do again right now? Go.
Question of the week. We have favorite panel of this book.
Great. Do it.
My favorite panel was the one that I mentioned where Valkyrie showed up and she was like, "Yo," and she's like, "Oh yeah, I used to be a Valkyrie." I don't know why I like that. I think it's just a really cool visual stark contrast to what had been happening previously in the book.
Yeah, it was a nice surprise. Yeah. Chris, did you have one?
Did I have one? What?
Favorite panel?
I think my favorite panel from X-Force. What was Vince's?
Valkyrie.
The Valkyrie.
Oh, sorry. I tuned out during our own podcast.
That's right. Chris was Vince is doing plugs. I don't even pay attention to this shit.
My favorite panel. My favorite panel is two guys right here.
Oh, thank you. My favorite is when Siren catches that guy that tries to escape from the fire escape.
The other Native American. Yeah.
And so he just runs out the window and looks out the window and just sees her floating overhead. It's just I love seeing X-Men casually use their powers. It's my favorite thing.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I know I complained about that one guy calling himself a drunk Indian, but then later Warpath says, "Hey, don't call us Indians. We're Native Americans. That's what you should call us." I'm like, all right, they redeemed themselves a little bit. Great. Glad we got to that moment at the very end. Also, I forgot to mention at the end of X-Force number 75, there was a bonus little pinup with Sunspot and Danny Moonstar drawn by, drumroll please, John Paul Leon.
That's right.
John Francis Moore. So
artist of Earth X also, but not the Earth X in Crisis.
Different Earth X.
I kept thinking about Earth X the entire time we were reading Crisis. I love Earth X. I don't know why I love that book so much, but some cool stuff. Maybe we'll talk about it at some point. But great. Okay. I think we're rambling. It's time for us to end the show. Thank you, Vince. Thank you, Chris. I love you both. You're my favorite panel. Aww. And bye.